back in 2012, there was a 21st Century Innovation team that was charged with looking at what could we be doing better as a district? How could we address some of the concerns that we had? And some of those questions were, how do we increase success for all students? We had students that were making progress, but not every student. How do we increase the value of our diploma? So does our diploma have the same weight? Does it carry the same currency when it goes from location to location? Does it mean the same thing? Do our grades mean the same thing as other places? And how do we increase what parents, students, and teachers understand of what we want students to know and be able to do upon graduation? So is that easily communicated? Is everybody clear on that? And what do we do when students are not meeting that? And finally, how do we best prepare our students for success after high school? So the innovation team worked to research this and come up with a whole bunch of different scenarios that were open for discussion. So what did they actually find? And again, some of you have seen this before, but the left-hand picture shows a classroom in 1892. The right-hand side shows some of the classrooms of today. Thankfully, not many classrooms in our district look like that. But you can see not much has changed. So education has remained pretty much the same. We continue to do some of the same things and hope for different results. And we all know what that gets us. We also know that there was a lack of engagement among high school students. And what some of the research of the innovation team, what they found was that on a daily basis, nearly 66% of the students were bored. So that's more than almost 2/3. 17% were bored in every single one of their classes at the high school level. And most often it was cited with the material wasn't interesting and it had no relevance to what they were going to do after high school. 82% of the students wanted more opportunities to be creative at school. So how do we do that? This is what the innovation team was charged with. This is what their research was. So they started to look for ways that we as a district could move toward changing those numbers, changing those statistics. The other piece that they looked at was the Gallup poll, which looked at students that enter elementary school and the level of engagement is high. About 76% of the students are highly engaged through elementary school. And you can see the decline. In middle school, it drops to 61. High school, it drops to 44%. And I see a lot of parents nodding heads saying, yeah, that rings true. I have a middle schooler, and I can tell you I've already seen a difference. She's probably in that 61% right now. It's more about the social aspects of school right now rather than about learning. So I can relate to that as a parent. Again, some of the findings of the innovation team was that we needed to increase success for all students and engagement needed to be the focus. We knew that student engagement was something that we needed to target at all levels, trying to keep that engagement, what we saw in elementary school, high throughout our district. We also knew that we needed to make it clear of what we expect of our students to parents and teachers and administrators. We also knew from the research that we needed to separate work habits. So what is it that students are able to do and what do they know in terms of the knowledge, and to separate those two out. So the last bullet there talks about needing to reflect skills and knowledge of what the student can actually do, eliminating extra credit as part of that, which often inflates a child's grade, and homework completion. So those are some of the research findings that led us to the recommendation from the innovation team to move toward and implement a mastery-based learning system. What is that system? It's an approach to teaching and learning that's based on students demonstrating what they've learned. Again, separating out habits of work, separating out extra credit and homework, and really focusing on what's the content knowledge that the child is going to leave us with and move on to the next grade. So I'm going to stop there just for a minute. Are there any, from the parents that this is new or you've been to, this is your first session, are there any burning questions that you're hoping we answer tonight? Because that will help us kind of frame if there's something we need to do differently. It's a small enough group that we can do that. Is there anything that was on your mind coming here that you're like, I want to have that answered tonight? Or students, either one.
So based on your presentation here, are they really doing away with homework?
Not doing away with homework. Homework will have, there's basically, and Ken can as part of the innovation team could answer this really clearly, but basically there are two parts to homework. What we're going to be looking at is homework that is an extension of learning. That will continue as it always has. So the child does homework, the teacher gives some feedback, grades that counts toward the child's grade. Homework that is meant to be completion, so the teacher doesn't grade it, it comes back, the child comes back with the information that it's helping them to determine what they can do on an assessment later on. That will not be graded into the academic grade. That will be part of the student's ability to complete homework, a habit of work. So we're not doing away with homework. We're just separating out what's truly homework for learning and homework for compliance.
Okay. Well, the other part of my question is too, with the mastery-based learning system, was any thought given to having a smaller student-teacher ratio as a success measure?
Do any of the teachers want to talk about that a little bit? I mean, some of you are implementing pieces of that with your class sizes that you have right now. Anybody want to talk about that? We didn't consider anything other than the class sizes that we currently have. We have not looked at lowering the ratio of students. Many of our teachers that are in this room that you'll see in the video are doing aspects of it or pieces of it with a full class. I mean, Renee has a kindergarten class. Lori has a second grade class. Carrie, fifth grade. I was going to say fourth, but I knew that wasn't right. Anything you want to comment on that in terms of class size?
I think it's slightly easier for us because we have the kids all day and we have a little bit more flexibility with our scheduling, where if we had to rotate 120 some odd kids, it might be a little bit harder to manage.
And I think, I teach English, I love lower class sizes, but I think just lowering class sizes without putting a focus on really clear outcomes for our students, and without putting a focus on improving instruction wherever we can, just lowering the number of kids per class isn't necessarily going to result in learning without that kind of systemic approach. And I just reiterate back to the homework thing, I think homework remains absolutely essential as a high school teacher of English. I think that we want to change the way students think about it. I think a lot of times, by the time we have juniors, I teach almost exclusively juniors, and a lot of them have learned this game where they kind of chase points, and those points are what make up their grade, and that leads a lot of them to forget why we assign homework in the first place, that homework is really there to practice, to get them ready for assessments, that really we can control the environment, and we know for a fact what kids can do when they're in front of us. And I think that the more you help kids understand that the homework isn't about accruing points towards their grade, but as a chance for them to get feedback in advance of our challenging assessments, it changes the way they think about their learning. So that's kind of the two answers.
What is the incentive for the student to actually do the homework if it's not chasing the points?
In my AP class, we've got kids who are about as good at chasing points as there ever will be, and it's a learning curve because they're used to having that kind of reward. But I will tell you, in the last couple of years that I've shifted, the reward is they will not pass my assessments without my feedback. I actually had a kid when I kind of introduced this and really lowered homework to be mathematically meaningless, and what a student, I couldn't have planted them better, said, so you're saying we don't need to do our homework, but in a sense we actually have to do it more now. And I said, exactly. And I'm not saying that it's not an easy shift, it's a complicated one, especially for students that have been kind of in the system as long as they have been. But the key becomes parents' involvement looks a little bit different, because even though I'm reporting kids doing homework or not, if that's not impacting their grade dramatically until those summative assessments come, you almost have to, just looking on Power School and saying my kid's got a B, everything's good, it doesn't kind of tell the whole picture. So there might be assignments I'm entering that don't impact their grade, but are essentially telling parents whether they're doing what they need to do to get prepared, if that makes sense.
So what you're saying is that parents should be more involved than they are now.
That's right.
In the new, especially in the new system.
Lower class sizes and.
Right. So that's pretty disappointing then. I mean that the parents here are completely outnumbered by all these folks. I think that's a problem right there. And I guess my other question is, are all the faculty on board? All the teachers? I know that my son said to us, he said, you guys got to go to this presentation. It's really going to affect us. We're not going to have homework anymore. We're not going to get graded with A, B's, and C's anymore, and it's really going to change everything dramatically. So you need to be there.
So
we need to be there.
You've got a few different questions in there. The first one is we're not changing grading.
Yeah.
We're not getting rid of GPA. We're not getting rid of A, B, C, etc.
Yeah.
That is not changing. Homework, we just described, homework will continue.
Yeah.
Where the separation comes is if the teacher's actually grading the homework, then it counts toward their academic grade, versus if it's just completion, as Ken described, to get to an end result, then that's compliance and that's habits of work. So those, and then you asked something else at the beginning. Parent involvement and the
teacher
faculty.
and faculty awareness
So
involved.
faculty there's been lots and lots of opportunities for faculty to engage in conversation, to build capacity and understanding around this. The thing that you have to remember is that this is full implementation. We're looking at 17-18. So in 16-17, there is just a beginning part that we are going to implement in terms of the system, which is what we were describing. So grading isn't changing. Homework is going to be separated out. Extra credit will go away. It will be more like Ken was describing, that students will redo assignments to get to an end result for learning, because learning becomes the focus. That's really the crux of what's changing in 16-17. Okay. Other burning questions?
So now that homework still does have some weight, it's not going to be as much as it is, and my understanding is extra credit as now of, oh, I need extra points so I can make this grade, so next year I can get into AP or something of that sort. Now it's just going to be like, I don't have that. It's just test, quiz, focus on learning the actual material and more of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because with some of my fellow students, it's more of just, I don't care what they're teaching, I just care about my grade.
Mhm. That's
So-
exactly right. What you just described is exactly what the change will be. And as Mr. Daly said, it's going to take time for some. It'll take longer for some students to realize that. He teaches at the high school level, and he described how his students caught on, but other students are not going to get that as quickly. So there might be a time where students will struggle a little bit, but it'll be a good struggle because what comes out of it is true learning, which is what you're describing. Other burning questions, and we'll come back to questions and answers a little bit later, but I just wanted to get them out there if there was anything that you want to make sure that we addressed.
Is class sizes changing?
No. No. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Carrie and Christy for this part, and we'll do an activity, and then we'll come back to watch the video.
So these are the components of what we have developed thus far within the school system. We have and if you think about a triangle, if you may, at the top of the triangle are cross-curricular standards. These are standards that students should display in multiple content areas. So for example, if you think about problem solving, they shouldn't just be problem solving in a math class. They may be problem solving in a social studies class or a science class. That could be an example of something that's cross-curricular. Then within each content area, so mathematics, language arts, social studies, and we'll go down the whole gamut of all content areas, we have graduation standards. And tonight, Carrie and I will be sharing with you, we have the math graduation standards and the ELA graduation standards to be sharing with people to kind of get a feel for what those look like. In each of those content areas, there's about 5 to 8 graduation standards. Those graduation standards are K-12. So we have kindergartners working towards the same math standards, but it's a progression that we have at the high school level. So they're all falling under that umbrella of a graduation standard. Under each graduation standard, in each content area, there are performance indicators. So performance indicators are where we get a little bit more nitty-gritty and specific to the grade level or the course that a student is in. So as I said to you, all students are working towards our graduation standards, but the performance indicators at that grade level will tell you if they're progressing as they should be. So if I have a 6th grade math student, there are 6th grade performance indicators that tell me they're on target to meet the graduation standards. Does that make sense? Or are there questions? Did I miss anything?
No.
Okay. Question.
Should those graduation standards be slightly different as it's going to be cross-curricular? So that, let's say in math, I'm really, really good at doing the algebra and focusing on that, and then taking those tools that I've learned in math and focusing on science, like using independent variables and dependent variables in an algebraic formula. And also for other classes, like in high school and such, where there's AP, honors, and general classes, will those be different performance indicators depending on those classes? Or
Correct.
is
So
it
your
just
performance indicators are course specific or grade level specific. So in grade 6, you would have performance indicators in math, science, specific to that content area. Your cross-curricular standards are things that will fall everywhere. So your communication skills, your problem-solving skills, your researching skills, those will fall in the cross-curricular, where you will hit those in many different areas. Did that answer your question?
Partially. With
Partially. Okay, go ahead.
So it's not the same, like, let's say I'm in 7th grade.
Mhm.
So my friends that are just in general would have different 7th grade general course indicators than my 7th grade, let's say, advanced math indicators.
They may, yes, because it's course specific.
Okay.
Okay? Other questions on these three?
But the graduation standards would be the same.
The graduation standards are the same for everyone. Right.
Right.
Indicators would change.
And just to kind of, the example with math is a little different than English language arts. The indicators would be the same, but it would be differentiated by text complexity or different tasks that might be given to different students. And then you would have a score range to show if you're meeting mastery on the different indicators. So we're looking for all students to meet mastery on the same skills, but in potentially different ways depending on their own personal learning path.
Are there other questions with these three? So what we had for you tonight is we have different tables set up. Over on that side of the room are some math tables, and they're banded by grade level. So there's a K2, 3, 5, middle school and high school. And on this side are 4 ELA tables, also banded.
What's
So-
ELA?
English language arts, I'm sorry. So, what we have for you is the graduation standards first to look at and get familiar with. And then we have some the performance indicators for those grade levels for you to try to sort out, to see, again, gain familiarity with the performance indicators and see if you can decide which graduation standard they fall under. And so I don't know how you wanted to split up with this.
Do you want to just do math and then
First?
switch to ELA? I
We
mean, we're a
can do
small
that.
enough group that we could do that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Why don't we
Okay.
do that?
That way
And
you can
we thought
experience
you
both
could
of them.
sit at the table in whatever grade band your children are in, so that you could become familiar with what we'll be looking at in their grade range.
So they'll be using these things to analyze data,
Variations, standard deviations.
all of that. So analyzing all kinds of data. Making inferences is,
So maybe they
implying
didn't-
things from the
that was
data
the
and then justifying their conclusions.
Okay, so quantitative numbers, complex numbering systems, so what do you mean, binary?
No, so complex number systems, we're getting into irrational numbers and we're getting into
Right, it all
imaginary
becomes
numbers at the high school level.
Because
So
that's what I learned
imaginary
also
numbers
learning
comes
about
with
the
our
linear
study
equations
of
as a function.
quadratic equations, which have a
Well, are there supposed
exponent
to
of
be
2 in them.
Like they only
Cubic
fit under
equations,
one.
things like that. So
I
those
mean, I did quadratic equations way back when.
parents? This is gonna be really fun for us
I'm
parents.
250 and I've
especially
never
as a
used.
student.
So,
Well, that's why we're
in-
starting now,
based
like you
on
said, it's
saying
coming in
before,
17,
being
18,
able to
so
apply full time and
you guys are doing a nice job taking the first
And-
step coming.
it's just.
Yeah, I tried to go to the first one, but
Yeah, so in math, there's the two sides, right? There's the really useful real life side,
Right.
and then there's the theoretical math. A lot of these, to some extent, are built off of a lot of that theoretical math, but we're trying to make courses at the high school level, so we're introducing a new course next year to marry the two sides.
And so nothing's being considered for smaller classrooms, I think areas such as math, if you look at it, or in.
You can rationalize.
Right, and that's, and when we were writing these and everything, that became the hardest part of it.
Right? Because what you're doing here is, I think, anything you see the
lot
word
is being
context, it goes in here, because that's where they say,
And it's just,
But no, they-
I'm not sure of too many of our high school math classes that are
right, because that's the one in
enormous
the
class
contextual
sizes. I mean, we
situation.
really do try
That's the
to
whole
control
point, is
that
to
as
see
much
where
as
you're
we
going
can with
and
the
where we're
staffing that we
using it.
have.
We used to,
You
we
know,
used to put
obviously,
real world,
budgetary
real
constraints are
life,
what they
but
are,
it's
but
not
we
real
really
world, real life, it's
are
contextual.
cognizant of
So,
our
because
class
what's real
sizes.
world view
So
is not real world
we're-
to some extent. You know,
So
I might
what
say
are we
it's-
here to do right now?
and-
Okay, so I have for
It
you.
becomes a barrier to.
So these are performance indicators for Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2, which are three, progression-wise, most students are taking those three courses. And so, looking at these indicators, so for example, convert fluently between expressions, including radicals, which is your square root symbols, and rational exponents. When you look at these graduation standards, you're looking at number and quantity, geometry, functions, algebra, or statistics. Where do you think this would fall? Under which graduation standard? So that's really what we're doing, is to try to let people see the progression of the indicators as they go up. So just kind of doing a little sort here.
But if you don't understand the homework, how do you even know if it's done?
Well, that's what we're also trying to work on too, is when we send the homework home, it should be what kids are
Unless
doing.
even this year, we're getting homework assignments, and it doesn't make sense to my
That's what,
mind.
that's what we're trying to work on.
Master's degree.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to work on, is that the work you're sending home is applicable to what you do in the class. That's why if you start to take away, that
Convert
I'm sending it
for,
home just to send them homework, and when the kid comes back, I'm gonna give them 20 points for doing it. That has nothing to do whether they know the material or not.
Yeah.
That's why we're saying that would go into your like completion grade, like your work habits grade.
Well, they're asking us to try.
So like when your kid comes home,
They're asking us
gonna
to try
start
to.
home with homework that means something, that's gonna help them in the longer run, So instead of sending home 30 problems on page, we're just sending home one good thought question,
My problem
And sending home,
That's the way
like,
it's been.
language that we use, all of
well,
this
that's
stuff.
why we're switching to this, we're hoping it's,
I'm in corporate communications, and
Beyond the.
people do not
get
talk like
the
this.
equivalent
It's-
of
it's-
3 hours of homework.
we're working very hard on that.
Because it's like, if you sit there and say, we don't give these kids homework, they're gonna be going.
Construct and interpret functions in terms of.
Well, I'm on the math coach in the district. I
feel as if like half the material they have in the classroom aren't even, concepts that we would use in the outside world. Like, I'm gonna be doing computer software engineering, I'm gonna go to like,
I said so.
half of the stuff that we do is not
Right,
incorporated with
so now
the
we're
class.
so now there's a very long time.
So why is like,
It's just a mind shift.
I don't know, it's mind boggling to see that they incorporate stuff which we don't even need to know.
Like, if you said there's 30 problems, and the kid can't get number 1 right, what's gonna make him get 28 right?
We're also in the world of Common Core students, which isn't necessarily positive.
Right.
Because, oh, I gotta get this person, we can work with them, it's like, don't get out there, that's what it's like. Go to the but sometimes one of these other ones will trigger something in your head, oh my God.
Right, so like to send, then we have to look to it, like you said, also like the home environment, kids. We don't know that we have, at the home, there's a dog service support, we know we send kids home that don't have a dog service support. We know we send kids home whose parents do the homework. We send kids home.
Well, actually, I grew up with families like that where,
Yeah, so we really have to,
To really focus the students in on what are you learning, not what are you completing. We're in this section of the book. I don't care what section of the book you're in, what are you learning from that section of the book? So to really shift that thought process.
I think they should apply more to AP classes because I'm in history right now for an AP class and all we do is like straight lectures. Like every single class is lectures. We don't know what we're doing and like he's, the teacher, he skipped from one period to another and it's like, okay, now I need to go back and forth in my textbooks to find the exact, date or period where we're supposed
Right.
to be learning.
Right. And that's really the shift, is, what are you learning? And they are going to go up to AP classes. Right now, these are just the 3 standard courses, but we are developing them for our other courses and our AP courses. So Mr. Johnson, you're from Lyman Hall, right?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson will be with me this summer, and we're working on these for AP statistics. Exactly.
What about AP classes?
We'll be doing that also with Cirkin. Yeah, so we started with the 3 courses that 90% of our students take, and then we're going to be working our way out to all those electives. So the pink ones, just FYI, the pink ones are Algebra 1.
Colorblind,
Okay, so these three here are Algebra 1. I don't know if, this is graduation standard 1, so,
The issue is if the parents are just like,
That's feedback.
okay, so none of these fall here.
It's obviously his parents and students.
These all fall,
you're trying to have one set of
this is statistics and probability. Because that's analyzing data. So as soon as you see that analyzing data, this is functions. So these are different types of functions. You have your arithmetic and geometric. Again, very, very academically related. And this, when you see equations and inequalities, this falls under algebra. And so those three that we just moved are Algebra 1 standards. Your yellow, so these examples here are Algebra 2 standards, and the blue is geometry. So you should see, obviously, and I can see that most of your blue fell under geometry, which makes sense, because we don't have a lot of geometry standards in the other subject areas. Because we're a state that does Algebra 1 geometry, Algebra 2, we don't mix everything together.
Take your education serious. But that's good feedback though in terms of it being user-friendly.
I get feedback from other parents.
So this is statistics and probability. To some extent, there is, yeah.
And you are second grade? Oh, you're LA's teacher? Hi. Oh, wonderful. So you know days. Because I don't know. So you're a ringer around the sun. Challenge. See you. That's okay. Not me.
Well,
You meant, yeah, really.
now you know how I felt over there. You know why? Because I had more.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't want to mix, like triple that. That would have taken all two.
What are we doing now? What are you doing now?
These are the kindergarten ones because she has a kindergarten.
Are you, how about you put them where you think they go? And just
I will do
question
that.
them?
But then I need to really turn it so I can read them.
Okay.
correlations between, you know, you master your reading comprehension by writing, and then the rule of knowledge, language.
Other parents who can be in the classroom more.
That, did you have any questions as you went through them about any of them? No. So, I did not have somebody to go to, you know, we have a very heavy grade teaching, and that's something that they, you know, it's hard. In kindergarten, it's hard to have that. It's, you know, they're very different, but when the parents in
I know.
and it's just always tied to very email support speaks that, but I don't ever feel bad on, you know, sending her out to have a quick thing or whatever, you know, so no, I think she's very really valuable. Yeah, we would then take a rookie at increasing the rigor of their tests that they're reading. Grade bands above where they are to challenge them. So there's slight variations in how 212 ratchet up in complexity to 910s or in the question. And then in the 11th band, we have a district assessor meeting starting to use that. She really gets to look at a teacher that she reads.
Oh,
started to sort of play around with when we have students who, you know, reach.
You know, we started by looking at what are the key components. You had a chance to dig into some of the standards and indicators, and then look at inside our classrooms of what instruction looks like. So any burning questions before we wrap up here tonight? And I'll open it to any of staff members that are here. Feel free to jump in with the answers.
I have a question about assessments.
Okay?
Who develops the assessments? Do the teachers? Is it in collaboration with the students? I mean, are they going to be given choices as to how they're assessed?
Good question. Does anybody want to take? I mean, I can, but if somebody else wants to take it so they hear a different voice.
It's all of the above. Some of them are developed by teachers in collaboration with the students. Some of them are, ongoing, where the students are the ones driving the learning on a project-based type of assignment. I don't know if you want to.
I think it's a little bit of everything. So we're trying to provide, in some areas where we can, more voice and choice for students, and so they would be involved in driving some of that assessment work. And then teachers are collaborating with each other to make sure that our assessments are aligned with the indicators that you looked at.
And then, so my second part of that is once they're assessed, are there going to be, how is this going to translate to college? How is this going to translate to graduation and meeting the requirements to get into college?
Melissa, do you want to?
Well, as Mr. Barber said, that we're not changing anything on the transcripts right now, so they're still going to have a grade, numerical grade. Also, when we had the other 5 presentations, we actually had college representatives from the local state colleges. And their thing is, make sure whatever we're doing, it is in the profile. Most schools, colleges look at the profile, what their grading system, what they're doing, so it gives them more information. So they were here and that was their input to us. And we're not changing it right at this point.
That's correct.
About the grades on the transcript, so.
The other piece of that too, and to Melissa's point, and if you missed some of the earlier ones, they are on our YouTube channel, so you can watch the earlier versions of the 5 sessions that we had. They're repeat. There were some different panelists at different ones, but they did talk. At many of them, we had admissions directors, and they talked about how they're looking at multiple transcripts. No transcript looks the same, so they're not as concerned. What they feel strongly about, like Melissa said, is that our profile outlines what does an A look like, or what is the makeup of that graduating class. That's what's critical for them alongside the transcript. Okay.
Well, I have one more
Yeah,
question.
of course.
So my older son is a sophomore now in Lyman Hall. Next year, this is going to be behind the scenes, right? It's not going to be fully implemented. So he's going to be a senior, and it's going to be fully implemented for his last year of high school.
Yeah.
What is his transition going to be like?
So, anybody else want to take that? Yes, no? You don't have to. You don't have to. I can do it if you want. So basically what would happen is, and again, it goes back to earlier pieces. So during what would be his senior year,
Yeah.
That would be the full implementation year.
Right.
What's going to look different in that year is the instruction in the classroom. He's still going to have a traditional grading system. He's still going to have class ranks, so that transition into that for him is probably going to be pretty minimal. Where the difference is going to be is the focus is going to be on learning. There'll be lots of opportunities to redo work that he maybe hasn't been as successful on or not yet. You saw in that scoring criteria, and I know we showed it quickly, a not yet category. So we're not saying a child is deficient, we're just saying that they're not there yet. Our job is to make sure they move up to that mastery line. And there'll be conversions of how to then take that information and translate that into a traditional grade, because we know there are going to be kids like that that are going to be in a transition period.
Okay.
I don't know if Rosemary or Ken, if you wanted to say anything in addition to that.
Even if it ends up being a composite traditional grade, you're likely to be able to drill down a lot more deeply to see what that grade is comprised of, because right now, you've got a B, you've got a B minus, and that will really be populated with a set of skills that we teachers have worked on to make sure that our instruction is focused and our assessment is focused on measuring those distinct things. And probably the best way I heard it described was, and again, we're still going to have those traditional grades, but you imagine a pilot graduating from pilot school who got basically an A in takeoffs and an A in navigation and an A in steering, but an F in landing. Like, that's a huge problem. That person should not be flying a plane. If you average that all together, it looks pretty good. They might
And they got their license.
And I think we're still going to composite that grade, but I think we're going to give much more useful information to parents and students about, and I've just started to, just in giving my students grades in the writing assignments versus their reading assignments versus their language assignments. Even if it all gets put into a B or a B plus, I at least have a student that's no longer hiding their inability to write by maximizing it in another area. At least they know this is something I need to work on. And I think that your senior, you and they, will have a better understanding of what they need to work on going forward.
Any other questions?
Now that our grades are going to be composited of our quizzes and such, and also, like you said, okay, hey, I'm really, really bad at, let's say, writing, but I'm great at reading. There's going to be other times later on in the year where I can work more on my writing and try to progress up to the mastery. And then yet again, with the more traditional grades, you're still going to have those 4, 3, 2, 1 grades saying, okay, here is specifically in this one test or in this one section of the standard, you're not doing well. Here's how you can improve by this set date of the marking period. And then there's going to be a semester grade saying, okay, of these 2 quarters, here's how you progress. You need to progress this way so that you can make the finishing graduation mark for your year. Where, oh, you're seating here, you could spend more time on this to meet the completion mark or the graduating mark on this section, because you're much more proficient than your fellow peers on this section.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly what you said, because if somebody said to you right now, what is your B in any of your classes, and you probably aren't getting B's, but if you were, what does that represent? I don't think you or your dad would probably be able to pinpoint and say, it's because of this, or it's because you are missing this piece. And it goes back to what you said earlier at the beginning of this conversation, was when you said the focus is on redoing, so you focus on learning and getting better. That's exactly it.
I have another question regarding Power School.
Okay.
You mentioned something at the table before that I was sitting at, but how is this going to be incorporated into Power School so we as parents can go in and actually take a look at where they fall within these
So in 17-18,
criteria? Yeah.
In 17-18, so not next year, the year after, Power School the progress reports, your report card will be at the end of the year. That will show progress toward the graduation standard. The other times during the year, that will be a progress report at the indicator level. So you know how you were working with the different standards and the indicators?
Yeah.
Progress reports will be in Power School, so you'll be able to go in there at any time as a parent and see how are they doing on those indicators throughout the year, with that ending market, the ending report card at the end of the year on the graduation standard. So nothing should be a surprise to you as a parent if you see your child is not progressing through the scoring criteria to this mastery level, because this is where we want all students to get to at the indicators. You'll know that there's something we need to continue to work on to get to that point, because what will then happen is at the end of the year, they're more than likely not going to be meeting that graduation standard. And that's where our system of supports and interventions has to kick in to support the child to make sure that they are getting to this point.
Okay, so one of the math standards was knowing number sequences. So I'm a parent, I go in there and knowing your number sequences, how do I help you with that?
I can take the beginning part of that.
Go ahead.
One of the pieces that we already have in place now, and it's continuing to evolve, is we have a parent website that actually links to different resources to support. Eventually what that will do, it will be linked to the performance indicators and the standards so that you as a parent could go and look and see, okay, I don't know what that means. Let me go look at it. There might be some games, there could be worksheets, there could be videos on there to help you to understand how to help your child with that information. That's a work in progress that we've started this year, and that will continue to evolve until we move to the full implementation. Anything you want to add with that?
Well, and all of our indicators are based off of a progression. So we have our progression from kindergarten, and what you looked at in math was up through Algebra 2. So it's looking at where that indicator is at that grade level and kind of backtracking to find out where our students' gaps are and filling in gaps if they might have them.
I had a ton of questions, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So, teacher buy-in, faculty buy-in on this whole concept. I know that you have groups that are working in subgroups, et cetera, but are all the teachers and faculty and everybody, are they all going to have to they're all going to have to buy into this, right? And then so what kind of training are they going to get so there's a consistent message between all teachers and all the students, et cetera?
So, okay. So I know Christy alluded to it a little bit, that staff is going to be working on the performance, the scoring criteria this summer. The next step of that, when you talk about the training to make sure that we are on the same page, is to calibrate. So basically looking at multiple pieces of student work and see, are we scoring in the same way as a staff? Because if we're going to hold kids accountable, we need to make sure that we have consistency in how we're grading or how we're assessing or scoring students. That's one piece of it. The second piece of it comes in a similar activity to what you did. We're doing that with staff as well, where they're going to actually break apart the standards and indicators and look at how do they fit together. And then beyond that, the next layer of that is developing a toolkit with the teachers, and this is district-wide, around, so if this is my indicator and this is a standard, what does student work in my classroom look like that supports the work that I'm doing around this area? So that's all work that's going to happen next year in preparation for 17-18. In terms of staff buy-in, I mean, there are always, I would tell you that there's going to be people that, like the pioneers that are in the video that are here that are already gung-ho. There are going to be other people that they've brought along the way. And there are going to be people that are going to be those fence sitters that are going to say, okay, I'm kind of what Sarah said in the video. I'm not too sure of this. And I think a perfect example are some of the people that were naysayers or were like, I don't know that this is a great idea, are now some of our biggest proponents moving it forward. We've had multiple opportunities for staff to just sit and talk to other staff, some in the video, some that are not, some that were on the previous panels, to talk about what does this look like, and just kind of an open forum type piece. But it's not going to be a choice. It's going to be.
But are the teachers going to be assessed on their performance of teaching to this method?
Part of the teacher evaluation plan is measuring student achievement as part of the teacher evaluation plan. So if students are achieving, then that's a particular score that a teacher gets in the teacher evaluation plan.
Okay.
And that plan, just so you know, there's a district teacher evaluation committee, and they develop specifics around that plan, but there is a piece of it that involves student achievement.
So, let's say all of your classes you exceed on most of your performance indicators. So on at least a standard grade, you would be getting, let's say, A pluses for the quarter. Would there be other classes for said kids who exceed in, let's say, math or science, who really wanted to push forward their knowledge and learning? Is there going to be classes for that, or is it just going to be, here's extra material to replace this usual regular material?
I don't think it's extra material. I think it goes back to what Lori said in the video, and I think Carrie maybe even mentioned it as well, is that it's students taking charge of their own learning and doing something different that's I think your words were to infinity and beyond or something like that. That's what it's going to look like. So from a teacher's perspective, if a child is consistently scoring here, the job then is to look at how can we move them even further, because you're ready at that point for new learning. The big change in mastery-based learning is it's not how much time you spend in 7th grade, it's what kind of learning is happening for you. So that learning is continuous. You're a perfect example where you're going to move into accelerated math. That's not, every child is not in accelerated math. You're going to continue to progress through that. I don't know if teachers, if you want to add anything, that was, okay, all right. Any other questions? And I know it is 8:30. I said we'd end at 8:30, so those of you that have childcare need to leave, but we're here if there are additional questions. Again, there'll be more of these nights continuing into next year. One of the things you should be on the lookout for, and the date is September 28th, we're going to be showing Most Likely to Succeed, which is a great, if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to come. It really captures through film and documentary of a school district in California, I believe it's California. That has really looked at what does this all look like in their school, and they built their school around mastery-based learning. So it'd be a great thing to put on your calendar. There will be more information coming in the fall. But again, I want to thank staff that were here. I know it was another night out for you, so certainly appreciate those of you in the video. Thank you. And Christine, Carrie, thank you for your organization of this. And again, we're here if there are other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.